Welcome to Stories of History. I am your host, Virgilio, and today we are going back in time to 16th century Europe, a world so different than the one we live in today. Just imagine a time when death was like this ever-present shadow, and the fear of purgatory, that in-between place between heaven and hell, weighed heavily on everyone's minds. Now imagine this: the Catholic Church, the most powerful institution in all of Europe, is offering a way out of this spiritual waiting room, not through prayer, not through good deeds, but through indulgences. They were essentially papal dispensations, like a sort of remission of temporal punishment, which you could purchase. To reduce your time in purgatory, it's almost hard to fathom, isn't it, that this was the reality back then, but it was. And this practice, understandably, sparked a lot of outrage, particularly in Germany, where a monk named Martin Luther was about to change the course of history. Luther was troubled by what he saw as corruption in the church.
And these indulgences, this was the last straw. So on October 31st, 1517, he took a stand, nailing his 95 theses to the church door in Wittenberg, Germany. These theses weren't just complaints, they were a direct challenge to the church's authority. He argued that salvation couldn't be bought and sold, that it was a gift from God, freely given through faith alone. It's so interesting to think about how this act of defiance set off this huge chain reaction, and it would end up completely reshaping the religious and political landscape of Europe. And it wasn't just the indulgences that bothered Luther. He also questioned the structure of the church itself, including the insistence on celibacy for the clergy. And this wasn't just about, personal preference. This was about power. Think about it. A celibate clergy meant no heirs, which meant that the church's vast wealth and property stayed within its control. Luther saw this as yet another example of the church putting its own interests above the spiritual well-being of its followers. And Luther, he practiced what he preached. He eventually married a former nun. This bold move further challenged the church and resonated with many people who wanted
a more relatable and a more accessible faith. But Luther's message might have stayed in Wittenberg if it weren't for a revolutionary invention: the printing press. This groundbreaking technology allowed Luther's writing to spread quickly throughout Europe. For the first time ever, religious debate wasn't limited to scholars and theologians. Ordinary people could read and interpret the Bible for themselves and form their own opinions, independent of what the church was saying. This was a huge paradigm shift, the birth of a new era of mass communication that really challenged the foundation of religious authority. And the impact was monumental. Luther's ideas sparked the Protestant Reformation. This movement just swept across Europe, dividing Christendom and leading to all these new Protestant denominations. But the consequences of this went far beyond religion. The Reformation fueled social and political upheavals, wars, and persecutions. It played a role in the rise of nation-states, as rulers broke away from the Catholic Church and established their own national churches. Some historians even say that the Reformation paved the way for the Enlightenment and for the modern secular state. Luther himself was a really complex and a controversial figure. He wrote a pretty provocative epitaph for himself. He said, "During my life, I was your plague pope. With my death, I will be your death." And while his curse didn't fully come true, his actions, without a doubt, left an indelible mark on history. He challenged authority, he questioned dogma, and he ultimately changed the course of Western civilization. His story reminds us that even a single voice, fueled by conviction, can ignite a revolution and reshape the world. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep those minds engaged. Until next time on Stories of History.